recognize the other on an equal par with ourselves? There's no incentive to do that if we don't factor in Allah's authority and power presence in our personal lives and in our social lives. The issue of whether a person wants to break his fast when he or she is sick or when he or she is traveling. Once again, if you've covered this territory, you will find some Muslims saying, break your fast, other Muslims saying, it is up to you. Don't break your fast is better. Those opinions are there. It does not serve Islamic solidarity to come and say, whichever opinion you agree with is fine. No one wants to force you to adhere to an opinion you don't agree with. But once you do adhere to your own opinion, don't give the impression that the other opinion is inferior to yours. That is a feed for sectarianism. This is how they got sectarian wars going. And this is why we have hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of innocent Muslims become refugees or die. They are being killed. Just in yesterday and in today's news, mothers, I don't want to become more graphic and more descriptive because I know the sectarians better than they know themselves. And I don't want to fall into their trap. So I'm not going to use keywords or buzzwords that will give my expression a sectarian undertone. There are mothers in Iraq in the past few days, because of this heightened clash, that are killing their own babies and children because they see certain death. They are assured by their own selves that their babies and their toddlers are going to be killed tomorrow or the day after. Better they be killed in dignity than be killed by an enemy. This is how much sectarianism has taken its toll. It has infested itself in the depths of that most precious and quality in humanity, which is motherhood. So they'll come and tell you issues like, make big issues, khutbahs, lessons, presentations, lectures about who a musafir is and who a marid is, who a traveler is and who a sick person is. If a person has a wart on his finger, is that person to be considered sick? If a person has a toothache, is that person to be considered sick? Traveling. What does traveling mean? Does it have a physical, geographical distance to it? Or is it a state of mind? All of these elements are there. And you can read, you can educate yourself, you can understand, and then you can reach your heart's content of a resolution about the answer to these questions. Don't let someone come and impose on you the answers to these questions. A doctor is going to know me more than I know myself. If I'm sick, I know I'm sick. I don't need someone to tell me I'm sick. And if I'm traveling, I know I'm traveling. I don't need someone to tell me I'm traveling. Leave it up to your own conscience to define for you exactly what me being sick is and what being a traveler is. And let us get out of this rut that we've been in for so long. Okay, there are general conditions for fasting. Not everyone's expected to fast. The word in the ayah, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. Allah is speaking to alladhina amanu. So as-siyam is not, fasting is not mandatory upon those who are not from alladhina amanu. It's not mandatory. This brings us to an issue in some people's mind. What's the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min? Allah didn't say fasting is mandatory upon Muslims. He said fasting is mandatory upon committed Muslims. Okay, just listen to what Allah is saying. That's all it takes. Maybe we can begin to understand Islam as a civil description of individuals who are subject to Islamic morality and legality, instead of understanding it in the ritualistic sense. Which brings us to another hadith from the Prophet, from which much confusion generates. And that hadith says, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. Islam was constructed upon 5 things. شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وصوم رمضان وحج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا. I think we are familiar with our Islamic vocabulary enough for me to skip the translation of this hadith. But what I want you to think about is the Prophet of Allah is saying Islam is constructed on these. These are not Islam. Well, if you take a look at this building behind us, there's a house, and beneath that house there are foundations. The Prophet of Allah is saying the foundations are these 5 pillars that we spoke about. But Islam itself is that house there, not the foundations. Which is another fine point that escapes the attention even of erudite Muslims. There are many hadiths that have become the talking points of khatibs and prayer leaders and lecturers, instead of us returning to Allah's book immediately and directly and speaking about this issue, and then in that context quoting such and such a hadith. We have failed to do that. We construct our presentations around the hadith and then we make them fancy by quoting an ayah here or an ayah there. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. ادعوه سبحانه وأنتم على يقين بالإجابة. الحمد لله الذي هدى وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه أولي النهى والتقى. Dear committed brothers and dear committed sisters, it was on this day 27 years ago that our late Imam, Al-Imam Al-Khomeini, may Allah rest his soul in eternal peace, passed away. This is not a long time, 27 years. We're not talking about 27 decades or 27 centuries or 27 millennia. 27 years. It's a short time period. If you can only jog your memory back 27, 28, 29 years when the Imam was alive in front of our own eyes and ears, and the sentiment that engulfed everyone pertaining to everything he said and everything he did. Now, jump 27 years, 28, 29 years to today, and look at the same individuals that you know very well. Look at them now. Some people say it's not wise even to invoke his name in public. This is how pathetic some Muslims have become. An Imam who's been acknowledged by the consensus of the Muslims and even the non-Muslims who are deprived and dispossessed and dislocated in this world. And then we have some smart shots popping up nowadays and saying, well, the time that we are in, we have to pedal it soft. We have to keep a low profile. Well, once again, if that is the way the person thinks, and if that is the way he understands things, we can only feel sorry. Time is lapsing. How long do you have to live? And besides, don't you think in the future you will not have some type of reckoning with these types of emotions and thoughts that you have today? Can you compare an Imam in the full meaning of the word with the current kings and presidents? We have and we had an Imam who was the pace setter for everyone who is in a position of decision making and social and political and military responsibilities. Unlike the presidents and the kings that we have proliferating all over the place. They go on honeymoons to different parts of the world. I don't want to go into the details of where they go. They take with them an entourage, hundreds, if not thousands of maids. They transport vehicles, armored vehicles, to ride around on the Mediterranean coast, or in California, or in other places. Can you compare that behavior of these playboy kings and presidents with an Imam who was pristine in his character, in his demeanor,